With the sixth pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Ashton Jeanty, running back, Boise State.
You said one of the elite players. Your comp was LT, Lance.
Yeah, he's my favorite.
Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to another glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSPR is my Twitter handle. I'm of course joined by with Ryan Holmes here. Thanks for folks listening to the show in Miami, Florida, Pittsburgh, PA, Los Angeles, California, and Brooklyn, New York. They're all listening to the Put On Raiders podcast. The Raiders, first, welcome back. Good to see you again. I mean, you've been all around the world, so good to have you home for a little bit. How you been? How you doing?
Good. I am on the beautiful shores as well for the first time in God knows how long. But just for a short amount of time, I'll be heading back to parts unknown here tomorrow. But good to be on the beautiful shores.
Yeah, good. It's always good to be out here. So, first year for Pete Carroll as a head coach for the Raiders. First year for Spytech and company, trying to get things done in this draft. I did a live show. I've been on a lot, so kind of want to get your thoughts about it. What are your thoughts about this draft? I know people have been gushing over it and throwing out A's like they're left and right. What were your thoughts about this draft from just the overall job by the Raiders, and then trading back, things like that?
I think it was a good job overall. I tweeted out I gave them a B plus. Obviously, trying to grade drafts the day after or the day of is difficult. Well, we won't know for about 3 years, but I do like some of the pieces they've added. I do like the depth they've added to this team. Now, I don't think a ton of these guys are day one starters. I know there's people out there that think 4 or 5 of these guys might start day one. If that happens, that's a problem on the team. But I think there are some developmental guys here with physical traits. And we talk a lot on this show about traits, going into the draft, and that's what the Raiders did. It's not about production all the time. Thornton is a great example of that, the receiver they took in the 4th round. It's a concern that he had his best year in college is 26 catches. But if you look at the size, the speed, the ability to win deep, he's not going to get double teamed on the Raiders. Not when you have Brock Bowers out there as well. So, especially with Ashton Jeanty in the backfield. But, just starting at the top, Jeanty, I'm usually against taking a running back, obviously in the top 10. He's already number 2 in the NFL as far as guaranteed money. He has to produce right away. Ashton Jeanty has to come in and run for 12 to 1,500 yards for the Raiders. I think he can do that. And when you start looking at the running backs in this draft, if they would have waited, obviously they would have missed out on Judkins. And I think Henderson went a pick after their 2nd pick. So I liked Mason Graham. I would have liked to add him. He wasn't on the board. And at that point, I was down to Jeanty, Mimbu, and Graham. I'm perfectly fine with taking Ashton Jeanty there. But now he needs to prove that he is an elite generational running back. And I hope he can do that. And the offensive line is going to have to open up holes, but he's going to have to break a ton of tackles to prove the value, and we'll see where that goes. Trading down in the 2nd round, right now it looks like a good move because they were able to pick up additional picks in the 3rd. But we'll see. They passed a lot of guys between 37 and where did they pick? 50, somewhere in the late 50s. What was Beach, 58? Something like that. Yeah. So they fell 20-something spots now. If Trey Amos turns out to be a Pro Bowl corner, if Will Johnson turns out to be a very good corner and the knee is not an issue long term, that we may look back on this. But the Raiders were able to move down and get value, and they added 3 prospects in the 3rd round. Jack Beach will start day one. I think Jeanty and Beach are starters. Beach is going to go in there. He's going to run block. He's going to be physical. He can win in the short and intermediate area. My concern is Chip Kelly's not a guy that's going to throw the ball down the field a ton. And if you're running out Beach, Myers, and Bowers, and you're running a lot of 12 personnel, and you put Mayer on the field too, you got to run the football. Those guys are not winning deep. So at some point, you're going to see Thornton. At some point, you're going to see Tucker out there to kind of try to stretch defenses, and they have to take shots with those guys. The This draft for me is going to come down to 3 of those 4 middle picks. They have guys with speed, size, length. With Porter, I'm a big fan of Darian Porter, but Darian Porter's not going to start day one, unless the Raiders just go super vanilla on defense and just play a lot of cover 2 and cover 3 and don't give him a lot to think about. He's an ex wide receiver. He's 6'2", 6'3". He ran a 4.30. He doesn't have a ton of defensive snaps. Now you're not going to want to line him up there against some of the receivers the Raiders are going to have to face across the NFL. You don't want him covering the other team's number one. Teams will motion over to him if you have him out there day one. You're going to have to hide him a little bit. But we'll see. If they can develop him and he can become a good starter a year from now, that's a good pick. I don't expect him to contribute a ton early on the first half of the first season. So we'll see what happens with him. He's a developmental project. I think Caleb Rogers can come in and be a backup interior guy across the left guard, right tackle. I don't think he's going to push to start year one. I would think that Alex Kappa, Dylan Parham is going into a contract year. He's been around. Jordan Mayer's been around. So I wouldn't expect a rookie to come beat out those guys in training camp, but he's good depth. And then Charles Grant, we'll see. The Raiders needed a swing tackle other than Thayer Munford to develop a guy that can come in and play left tackle. He has the traits. Again, athletic. He can move. He can get to the second level. He's got to get stronger. He's got to clean up his pass blocking technique. You don't want him playing in year one. If something were to happen, obviously to Colton Miller, if he goes down with an injury, you're going to slide Glaze or Mumford over there before you put Charles Grant out there. But and then Thornton. Thornton's the other guy. No production essentially in college. It's basically, skinny post, deep route, run the go and try to hit him deep. They didn't do it a ton. His yards per catch is amazing, but you can't have him go out there and just and run 1 or 2 routes. He's got to be able to run the complete route tree in this offense. Chip Kelly's offense isn't going to designate one guy just to run deep on every play. So he's going to have to really work on that. If he can, he's going to get a lot of cushion and no double teams. So he's going to have to be able to work underneath, get him running across the field on some drag routes, get him running some comeback routes, try to open up that route tree. But if they can develop Porter, Grant, and Thornton into starters a year or two from now, this draft looks a whole lot better. It's going to come down to coaching. The coaching have to develop those 3 guys. If those 3 guys don't develop, then we're going to look back at this draft 3 years from now, have a lot of questions. And then the rest of the draft, a couple of defensive linemen. I think Hemingway's a rotational guy. You're going to bring him in on third down.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to play the 3 gap or 3 technique. You might be able to play him when the Raiders go big. When Patrick Graham wants to have the 3 big bodies inside with the 2 outside guys. So a 5-man front. You're going to have Kuntz and obviously Crosby on the outside. You need 3 bodies inside. So you're going to have probably Pegues, probably Butler, Lalu, and you're going to rotate in Hemingway and see those guys. So I think both of those defensive tackles they took can be rotational guys. Pegues maybe can develop into a starting nose tackle. He's big enough down the line. And then they just took a gamble on the last, couple guys. I don't expect Tommy Mellott to make the team unless the Raiders plan on keeping 3 quarterbacks, because he's going to have to play on special teams. You can't just keep him on the roster as this gadget trick play guy if you don't have him involved in the offense every week and he's not returning kicks and he's not a gunner. He's not going to make the roster. So he's going to have to win the kick return, the punt return job. He's going to have to show enough to be able to keep him active as a wide receiver on game days if something were to happen to one of 3 or 4 other guys. It'd be a great practice squad guy to get on the practice squad and just continue to develop him. Cam Miller, we'll see. Not a ton of great physical traits, but he's a winner. He can move a little bit. I know he ran a 4.82, I believe they said it is pro day, but it does look like he moves around a little bit, and he does have the ability to make some yardage with his legs. It's not a big arm, but he's got a really quick release. He's a developmental backup. I don't think he's ever going to turn into a starting quarterback in the league, but he could be another guy that you could kind of develop as a backup quarterback. And then we'll see what happens with Cody Lightenberg, the tight end, or Lindenberg. We'll see if he can make the team as a rundown guy. I don't think he's going to be on the field much during passing downs, but again, it's a 7th round pick. Hopefully he makes the team as a special teams guy, but the Raiders still do that lack depth at linebacker. So I couldn't really go in A because there's still a number of holes on this team. And this draft is really going to come down to, like I said, they're going to get production from Genty and Beck. It's what can they get out of Porter, Grant, and Thornton in the next 2 to 3 years. Those guys have to develop into starting players by year 2 or year 3, or else, like I said, this draft might not be a B+. It might be a C. We'll see. And again, it comes down to Ashton Genty. if Ashton Jeanty goes out and wins Rookie of the Year and he runs for 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns, and no one's going to care.
Yeah, I mean, you said a mouthful there, but like, I mean, obviously that's that's pretty much the case. I'm not really. I mean, I was in love with the Beck pick, but I can see the vision of the Beck pick because he's had players like Beck. He had Bobo at UCLA. He had Riley Cooper at in Philadelphia. He's had wide receivers like this before, so I can see the vision there. Porter is a guy who I think Raider fans are excited about this draft, and I think one thing they got to pull back the excitement just a little bit, because if you get 4 or 5 guys who are contributors to your team, then this is a really good draft. The majority of these guys are not going to be guys who make the team or contribute. Should contribute. I do like the getting trenches done, getting some defensive tackles in there. You got to start pushing. If you're there and you're a defensive tackle, they're gonna, they're adding pieces to kind of push you. Charles Grant, I think that's the guy who Raider fans wrote. I posted a video of him playing just the other day because I was watching film on him. Let's let him slowly develop into hopefully into a left or right tackle for the Raiders. He played left tackle from what I've seen, and I don't want to go. You don't want to go get your head too far above your skis here, because Colton Miller is hopefully not going anywhere right now, and then he's your starter. And then if you want to develop him and give him some opportunities here and there to when you want to go heavy personnel or something like that, also run plays, maybe some goal line stuff, get him in there. But when you're coming from William and Mary, I think that's a big jump from there to the NFL. And then with Thornton, that offense in Tennessee, we've talked about how much we love that offense in Tennessee here on the show. But he's a guy, big guy, can run, big, catch radius, if you will. So I think that's the guy who I think people are looking to see as far as the later picks go to kind of contribute early for the Raiders.
Yeah, and I think Thornton, obviously going back to Beck's in there because he can run block, he's physical.
Yes.
He can win in the short intermediate area. They can get on the ball, they can break tackles. Again, he's not going to win downfield. I've had people reach out to me and say, well, he's not going to get double teamed. He can win down the field. I'm like, no, he's not a burner. He didn't run. When a wide receiver, running back, or DB doesn't run, it's because they can't run. My guess is he's somewhere in the high 4.5s. Like, this guy's not running a 4.4. He's not out there going to beat corners. He's going to have to win underneath and be physical after that. But if you're lining up right now in 12 personnel and you have Myers and Beck blocking, those safeties better watch out, because those 2 guys are going to come down and they're going to crack somebody. So I think that's what they're going to do, is you're going to run out there in 12 personnel, and then you're going to line up and you give the ball to Jeanty, and you're going to have those 2 monsters blocking at wide receiver. And then you're going to have, obviously, your 5 offensive linemen, Mayer and Bowers, if he's in the slot or wherever they move him. So maybe they move Bowers outside and on those run plays, and then you move one of those guys into the slot. So
I think he had something like 33 first downs catching passes over the middle last year's with Beck.
He doesn't drop the ball either.
Yes, he had 1 drop in 99. It's some ridiculous number, like how many what targets he had. He's a very sure-handed receiver. So, and I think he's
similar to Myers.
Yeah, and I think you block, and then you fake the ball to Jeanty, and he can slip by a corner or or a safety or whoever, and he can make a play in the intermediate area. And I think that's where I think that this draft seems like a draft to make sure Chip Kelly has toys. You know what I mean? So to make sure Chip Kelly can, so the Raiders at the very least can score points to keep to stay in games with teams. And then hopefully if in the fourth quarter, if they want to, they have a lead in the fourth quarter, they can go ahead and unleash the pass rush, NASCAR, whatever you want to call it, and then try to win games that way.
Yeah, I think Patrick Graham's looking around going, okay, you let all my starters go in free agency.
Yeah. He's getting paid
you didn't really draft me anyone. So I do think they're going to go out in free agency. Wouldn't surprise me if, like, Mike Hilton the Raiders need a slot right now.
Mhm.
Their nickel back right now is Darnay Holmes or maybe
Yeah.
Thomas Harper. So um, I know Hilton's getting up there, but he's still a good player. He can still blitz. He can still cover underneath. The Raiders don't play a ton of man, so like that would be the one knock against Mike Hilton is trying to play man coverage in there, but he's not going to have to do that a ton. Um, I think right now you're lining up. If you had to line up tomorrow, I don't think Charles Grant's active. I think Thayer Mumford would be
No,
the third tackle.
100%.
I think if you lined up right now, your starting secondary is Bennett, obviously, who we still have a ton of questions about. He didn't start early last year, and he pick and choose when they got him on the field, and then he got hurt. And then you're probably running out Eric Stokes, who hasn't been good for the last 3 years in Green Bay, and then
Mhm.
Darnay Holmes. Like that's not a good secondary. So
Yeah.
hopefully they can develop to Cameron Richardson. Hopefully they can get Porter up to speed to where maybe by midseason he can start. I think they're okay at the safety spot. If you have Polamalu, you have Chin, and then obviously Harper. It's not great, but it's not terrible. Like you can get by with those three guys. My question becomes the linebacking core.
It's
Um,
horrible.
the board, there's pockets on the board, and the board falls a certain way. I'm sure they were targeting linebackers. There just wasn't any where they were picking that they thought were valuable there, and that's what happens in the draft. So they weren't going to fill all these holes in one year. I think they did a
Yeah.
good job filling most of them if they can develop those guys. Like if they don't develop Porter, Thornton, or Grant, then we're gonna have a lot of questions. If they develop them, that's good. And like I said, I do think they'll add at least one more nickel, at least the nickel corner for agency. I could see him go getting another linebacker. Um, Maybe bring back Luke Masterson. I'm not a huge fan of him, but he won't cost anything, and he knows the defense. Or just bring in somebody because right now I don't think you want to run out there and you don't want Devin White and Landon Roberts on the field on passing down. So like I don't know what they're going to do when it's third and long. Do they bring in Amari Burney? Do they bring Chin down into the box and then put Harper deep? But then Harper, if he's your nickelback, you can't do that. So I still think they're a couple of pieces short on defense. Um, this draft signaled to me. It was kind of interesting because when you're going to trade assets and go out and get an older quarterback in Geno Smith and then pay him, and they're going to draft the running back in the first round, when they started trading down and bypassing guys who'd be sure starters to go get Beck, you're like, okay, we're kind of in a rebuilding mode, which was kind of what we thought. But it's going to come down to competition. These guys are going to have to go into camp now. Just because two guys are going to be meeting doesn't mean whoever wins is a good player. That's the other
Yes.
thing we
That's
have to
true.
look at.
That's very true.
Competition's
100%.
competition's great, but I'd rather have
100%.
I'd rather have star players. So like if they can go
Yeah.
out and get a Jalen Ramsey at this point and it doesn't cost them much,
Yeah.
they have the cap space to bring him in, but competition's good. But we saw a competition last year between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. How did that turn out? So
Yeah.
the Raiders right now have a competitions going on at linebacker and in the cornerback spots, but I'm not really sold that those guys are real difference makers, any of those guys at the NFL level.
Just looking through I think the secondary is my biggest concern, the cornerback room, and so they signed. Go looking through the free agents, undrafted free agents. They signed Mello Dotson from Kansas. They signed a couple of Trojans, John Humphrey and Greedy Vance. Greedy Vance is a slot corner. He played slot corner for the Trojans last year. So, and they also had I think the guy from Jordan Taylor from James Madison as well. So, I mean, the back seven of that defense is something that's a concern. I mean, he's getting paid basically. This draft might be like, hey Patrick, listen, take one on the chin for us this year, and then next year we got you. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe what I'm saying, because I mean, it doesn't seem like they did the whole give that. It doesn't seem like they gave the Patrick Graham any toys to play with in his defense this year.
No, like I said, I don't think they came out of it. I don't think there's one guy that'll start coming out of training camp. I don't
Yeah.
expect Porter, Hemingway, or Pegues to start. So, what they went into the draft with is what they're going to have, unless, like I said, they go into free agency. So, this defense, kind of made strides 2 years ago towards the end of the year. We know why. There wasn't a ton. They didn't play a ton of good quarterbacks. Last year was very up and down. There was a ton of injuries.
Uh-huh.
But now we're looking at a team that doesn't have Merrick. They don't have Spillane. They don't have obviously Hobbs. So they didn't really fill those other than Chin. So this is going to be really interesting going into the season because is Pete Carroll taking over the defense? Are they just going to go super vanilla cover three and just expect those corners to bail? and just not let the ball go over their head and then come up and tackle? Or is Patrick Graham going to be able to mix coverages, play man, play cover two, play cover four, play quarters? Can they play, cover one and then mix in cover three? But Patrick Graham's a big cover three guy too. So Patrick Graham doesn't ask his corners to do a lot. So maybe they can get Porter on the field a little bit earlier. Um, it's going to be really interesting to see when they line up. Is it a Pete Carroll defense or is it Patrick Graham's defense? So I'm interested to see how they handle that.
Listen. If it's a Pete Carroll defense and you're paying you gave Patrick Graham a raise just to run his defense, I mean that's fine with me. If I'd be happy with that, I'll take a check like that just to do that. But I think they have to meet. There has to be some meeting of the minds as far as like in the middle of that. I think they got to let him just. He just has to coach the team. Let P has to coach the team, and then let and let the coordinators give the coordinators as much immunity as possible to do what they want to do. The front, like I said, if everybody comes back healthy, the front four looks like a really good front four. But as far as like everybody else, this is really if you're looking at starting Devin White, you're looking at starting
they have to.
That's what I'm saying, but that's not really good. That's not really great football right there. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. That's why I was like wondering, could they have spent a little bit more money in some of these trouble spots? Because even the draft itself, Ryan, wasn't a great linebacker draft.
No, it wasn't, and there's still some guys out there they can go get if they wanted to do that. I don't expect them to because they did sign 2 veterans, so it is surprising that they waited till the 7th round to add one. Maybe they think highly of Tommy Eichenberg, Amani Burney, Amani Gaynor, that are still in this roster. So if I look at the defense, I'm going to question the linebackers. I'm questioning the defensive in-depth. Let's remember, like Max Crosby was hurt at the end of last year.
100%.
Malcolm Kuntz missed the season. And right now, the only guy they really have behind those 2 guys is Tyree Wilson.
Yeah.
And if you want to go down to Charles Snowden, I have no interest in really playing Charles Snowden this year.
No.
So like they didn't really add any depth there. So like maybe they go into the free agent market and they add another, potential pass rusher to add this mix. We don't know if Malcolm Kuntz is going to be 100% day one.
Yeah.
I would assume them to bring him along slowly in camp and try to get him to the starting line, week 1 rather than see what he has in camp. I wouldn't expect him to play a ton of preseason games.
Yep.
Coming off that ACL, because he got hurt late in camp last year. It was the week before the season started.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I do like kind of the depth inside now a little bit. As long as these rookies can come along and play, I think Matthew Butler's days are numbered on this roster as well. I think Hemingway basically takes his spot. We'll see. I have a lot of questions about the defense, but I do like where the offense is going. I expect this team to score points. I expect them to be top 15, offensive scoring team. If you have, Geno Smith, you have Genty, you have Bowers, you have Myers. The offensive line should at least be average. If they put JPJ at center, which I hope they do, and then obviously you'll see what happens. Maybe Parham goes to the left guard. Maybe Meredith and Cap end up being the guards. I've never been a huge Parham guy. He's been okay. Never thought he's like a guy that needs a second contract. He's a solid starter. I thought he's okay. He's serviceable. You can get by with Dylan Parham, but I don't think he's gotten any better.
He's a center
over the last couple of years.
So.
The Raiders have to move bodies though to get going. So that's the one concern. Hopefully, DJ Glaze makes a jump. You see these guys make jumps going into year 2. So the last year's draft class needs to step up. So we need to see DeCamera and Richardson make a huge jump and play. We need to see Trey Taylor make the team and be a special teams contributor or be a third safety. We need to see DJ Glaze, step up and become an even better player that he has the potential to be. So I've always thought Glaze was fine. I have no issues with DJ Glaze. So we'll see where this team goes. Now they need to stay healthy. This team does not have a lot of depth. We've already named a number of issues they have in their starting lineup, let alone the guys behind them.
Yeah, no question about it. Was there a round where there was one guy who you kind of had in mind that you thought the Raiders were going to pick, and then they ended up picking somebody else? I think for me, I thought it was a lot of buzz about Kyle Williams, the wide receiver from Wazoo. So I thought when they went Porter there, I thought maybe they would go him. Also, Vernon Brockton as well, defensive tackle from Texas. I thought maybe that would be the pick at 68. And then I think one more spot with the biggest one. I did a lot of draft work and looking at Upton Stout. I thought maybe that when they had the back-to-back picks, I thought they'd pick, they'd pick him in one of those two. He went 100 to the Niners. So I mean, listen, you can't, like I said, we all know that they're not going to be able to fill everything at one time. But I thought going into this draft, I wanted 2 running backs and I wanted 2 corners to get drafted. So they got one of each. So, but you can't really argue too much about the trenches. But I do think, I thought maybe they'd go early with the trenches. But I mean, listen, this is the second year in a row where they kind of had like a guy who was just a big time blue chip player available to him early in the draft, and they took him. So that they're adding good players to the team. We'll see what happens as far as that goes.
Go to the second round, and I've already mentioned both players. I thought Will Johnson and Trey Amos would be in play. And if I'm remembering correctly, the Raiders passed on both when they traded on the first time. I think Will Johnson went a pick before they were on the clock the second time, but Amos was still there, and they traded down a second time. So those were the two because I thought they both could come in and be starters at corner right away. And I love Porter. Let's be honest, in the Raiders mock, if you go through like the mock drafts I've done, I mocked them at one point. I have Genty, Porter, Rogers, Grant, and Lindenberg. I've mocked 5 of those guys to the Raiders at some point during the process. So I do like the players they have. That's why I kind of give them a B+. But I think where this team's going, because of the holes they had, like I was expecting them to draft in those the 3 third round and the high 4th round pick. I was expecting to take guys that were more ready to contribute day one than developmental guys. So that tells me, maybe they have a 2-year plan, take it slow this year, and then be really aggressive next year when they have a ton of cap room. But at some point they're going to have to put the gas down because you have Pete Carroll and Geno Smith are not getting any younger. So maybe this is a developmental year, and this team's going to win 6, 7, 8 games if they can stay healthy. But this team's 1 or 2 major injuries away. If something ever happened to Genty or Max Crosby, this team is in trouble in a hurry.
And that's why, and you mentioned that, and and that's the reason why I thought in this, and like we'll see. I didn't see when I looked at the Let me look at the thing real quick. The undrafted free agents. I didn't see any RBs.
Well, they signed Mostert too. Free agency.
I know. I mean, but we know Mostert's history. I'm a little bit worried about Most. I mean, like he's sharing carries, and he's not going to be the huge carrying the ball all the time. But I still want to get because he's short term. I want to get 2 running backs just because I don't want. I mean,
Pegues. They can use him as short.
Listen. I would not want.
I want to see him run the football.
I hope he doesn't run the football. I don't want to. I don't know. He's good in the Wildcat though. He's good at when he ran at Ole Miss. I gotta say that I would not want to be a linebacker seeing that dude coming at me. So So we'll see there. I just worry about like just be able to spell him. Maybe somebody from last year's. I mean, maybe in a new system. Sincere McCormick or anybody else can kind of spell Genty sometimes. I just don't want to. I don't want to burn him out to the point where he's like, because he's gonna get. Listen, he's gonna run the ball a whole lot in this game, for the Raiders this year. I just like the whole thing with what Ohio State did with Chip Kelly, where they had a couple of backs, and they were able to mix and match those guys and screen passes and be able to run power football with those guys too. So. Keeping everybody fresh, but I mean, we'll see how good this whole thing meshes together with the offensive line that they're trying to put together, and with Ashton Genty as being that that big runner for the Raiders, because the Raiders don't take quarterbacks in the first round. Usually they don't take running backs high in the and that was only a third one, right? It's only a third one in the top 10 the Raiders ever taken. Marcus Allen. I think it's him, Marcus Allen, and M.A. Fadden. I think so. So I mean, he has to be really, really good. So I think he will be. I just don't know how many. As far as like if you're looking for a bunch of wins, I'm not sure if you're going to get a bunch of wins, but I do think that Genty seems like a great compliment to what Bowers can do as far as that goes, because the play action game should be open all day.
It should be.
It doesn't always work out that
Some
way, but
Sometimes I'd rather them just turn around and hand the ball off to Gente. Let's see what he can do.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I do want to mention that I've seen a lot of Raider fans the Tommy Malloy pick, and I see this. Everyone thinks he's Taysom Hill. Like these are two totally different players.
Yeah,
Taysom
he's
Hill
small,
is
isn't
a
he?
big, physical guy that plays inline tight end, that blocks, that can play H back. Malloy's 6 foot, 205 pounds. Like he's
Yeah,
not Taysom Hill.
yeah,
Um, I would expect more of him kind of, developing him as a slot receiver, punt returner, occasionally maybe a third down, a play with him in the backfield to get the ball in space because this dude can run. He's electric with the balls in his hand when the ball's in his hand. But
Mhm.
when you have a veteran quarterback of Geno Smith's stature who's been around the league that long, you're not really taking the ball out of his hands. The Raiders aren't going to run a ton of wildcat, a ton of trick plays. They're going to
Uh,
run an offense for Geno Smith. So I don't expect, Malloy to get snaps at quarterback, maybe once in a
yeah,
blue moon, but like they're not putting in packages for him to play quarterback. It's going to be more get him the ball in space and see if he can be electric in the open field. Maybe can he develop enough to basically be an option out of the backfield or slot receiver to where Dylan Lobby doesn't have a job on this team? Like I think he's fighting more for that spot.
yeah.
And we'll see what happens going forward. But this time last year,
Hey,
everyone told us,
listen.
Dylan Lobby was Christian McCaffrey. So who knows?
Yes, the very true. And don't forget, even in the 2020 draft, all I heard about was what Lynn Bowden Jr. was going to be able to do as a joker for the Raiders too. So I would focus on the guys who are going to really contribute, not the guys like who are going to be a gadget guy who might make a play here and there or might not even make the team. So I'll definitely look at that as far as that goes. So I'm for my grade, I gave it a C because I just felt like whenever they at this point in my life as a Raider fan, I just if I don't if it's not a first round quarterback, I just don't. I mean, I get a little. I'm still gonna get frustrated with it. I think that I like what the Giants did. I don't like who they. I don't. I'm not. I think people are not gonna. I think if the Giants season goes the way I think it's gonna go, you're gonna see that kid play early on, the kid from Ole Miss, and people are going to realize a little bit how what a project he is because he didn't process. It was really only just like a one read thing. He really, if the Giants are smart, I mean, whether they're going to bring those two back or not, they would just not play him for the first year. Let him see what it's like to be the quarterback in the NFL. I can see the Raiders could have grabbed one. I thought if you're gonna take Cam Miller just at the end of the draft, for me, just take another position player and then just hope maybe that you find a diamond in the rough. Who knows? Maybe Cam Miller is, the next quarterback of the 49ers. Who knows? I have no idea. Maybe that. But I mean, I get I like a lot of things they did. But at the end of the day, they didn't. I think if you're gonna go Genti there, I would love to see him just go back up and then go back up and get a QB. But they didn't. But as far as Beck goes, I mean, obviously Beck is going to play. We know that Jetty's going to play. Those first two guys have to contribute for, like you said, for this draft to be really, really good. And I think the wild card guy who might get some. I think Pegas and Thornton are the two guys who can kind of sneak back in and be contributors this year. If for this, let's just say Beck and Genty are are really good players for the Raiders in year one. How many of these draft picks have to be contributors for like a number for a draft class to be successful? Because I think for the most part when you look back at a lot of the drafts you'll see like 4 or 5, so sometimes maybe 6 guys be contributors. What what would you be as far as like the numbers have to be for you to say that this was a really good draft? If we're looking back at this in 2 years,
I think four of them need to be starters, like
for
good
so four
starters.
starters, 4 starters,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the other, at least two of the other guys being key
rotational,
contributors.
yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay,
So now if they're all just rotational guys and Thornton's your number 3 or number 4 and Hemingway and Pegues don't get a starting job by year 3 and Porter's your fourth corner, then no, then it's not good.
Yeah.
So they need at least four. We already know they have two.
Yeah.
I would think at least four with two very key contributors. Now on the quarterback, I would push back a little bit. Like obviously, I'm not a huge Jackson Dart guy. I would not have traded back up to get Jackson Dart.
Mhm.
Um, Tyler Shuck to me, like he's old, I know, but like he doesn't make it through a season. He's never healthy. He's made it through one
Yeah.
season in 7 years in college. Like,
He played.
and
He
now we
played.
expect him
He
to.
played with Herbert. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, or Oregon. They're on the
Him
same
and
team.
Brock Purdy went to prom. Like I saw a picture like
They see
prom, like
that
both of them
picture.
together.
Somebody pulled that picture
Like,
out. That was yeah. That was
yeah,
nuts. That was nuts. That was nuts. That was nuts. That was
they had
nuts.
every opportunity to take Sanders, and they had all the information they needed. They chose not to, so that they had reasons for that. I'm okay with that. If they were not comfortable taking him for whatever reason, they had more information than anybody on Sanders. That's fine. Um, I think Cam Miller, like obviously they're going with the leadership, the mobility. Not great physical tools, but obviously mentally must have blown him away in the interviews. Like if you're going to take a guy like that in the sixth round, that's fine, and just develop him. If he pushes for the backup job and he's a backup quarterback for a couple years, like if Aiden O'Connell's gone next year or the year after, and then he takes over, that's fine. The
And
sixth round pick.
that's a good program. That's a good program.
I
That's
would
a
have
good
maybe even
program.
doubled up and taken Quinn Ewers too, like in the seventh round. Like just keep
Yeah.
taking them.
Yeah. I mean,
If
yeah,
one
me too.
at that point, if you put him on the practice squad, it doesn't matter. So, um, I think at this point, Cam Miller's probably going to end up on the. If Aiden O'Connell makes the team, then you're not going to keep three. Like you're not going to keep Cam
Yeah.
Miller. Just keep Cam Miller. He'll go to the practice squad.
Yep.
Malloy will probably go to the practice squad, and hopefully the rest of those guys make the team, unless
And
Miller
no,
beats them out.
and no. I thought in the sixth round, they had opportunity to take Will Howard, and they have a lot of information on Will Howard, obviously for obvious
They chose
reasons.
not to as
And
well.
they
Yeah.
and they chose not to. So the Steelers went and did that too. So we'll see. I mean that's like I said, that's all fine and dandy. I just you know me
I
as
think
far as that goes.
there was that big break. So when they traded with one of the trade backs was I think they lost their fifth round pick. So I think
Yeah.
they picked like in the 130s, and the next pick was 180. They went 50 odd picks without a selection,
Yep.
and that's when some of the quarterbacks started going. So obviously they didn't want to trade back up. They went out and signed, I think they're up to 16 undrafted free agents. So that's 27 new players.
Yep.
Plus they might sign a couple out of minicamp. I think the roster last I checked was somewhere in the 60s. Like they have plenty of room to add players
Mm-hmm.
to this roster. They're going to keep doing it. Pete Carroll, the Raiders, what did they release 5 or 6 guys like right before the second day of the draft? Like Devonshire, their seventh round pick, the corner from Pitt's gone.
Yep.
I think Moaga, the linebacker from USC, who's been a special teams guy's gone. So obviously something happened during the mini camp where Pete didn't really want those guys around anymore. And this is what's going to happen. Pete did this in Seattle the first year. They are going to turn over this roster like crazy. So I could see them even going on adding, 2, 3, 4 veteran free agents. Cut down day when we get to cut down day after training camp, you could see them add 3, 4, 5 more guys. So Pete Carroll's just going to keep churning the roster, especially the bottom, 10 to 15 spots till he's comfortable with the guys he has.
Yeah, no question about it. I think is there anything before I just want to just talk about the Sanders story at some point, but just to get it out the way. Wait, did you have anything else about the draft?
I find it
You
interesting that
yeah.
Cleveland traded out of 2. They
Yes.
basically passed on Travis Hunter, and the thought being, okay, we're going to stockpile picks for next year. If we have our pick and Jacksonville's pick, there's a chance we're both picking in the top 10, and then we can maneuver around and get the quarterback we want.
Mm-hmm.
Then they took Dylan Gabriel in the third, which is kind of a reach for Dylan Gabriel. So like, all right, I don't know what they're doing. They just went Dylan Gabriel. They traded for Kenny Pickett. They signed Joe Flacco. They still have Deshaun Watson in the building. And then they turned around in the fifth and took Sanders. So they can't break camp with 4 quarterbacks. So like 2 of those guys, maybe 3 will make the roster. One of those 2 guys between Sanders and Gabriel's not going to make the team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they would make it through waivers to get to the practice squad. Sanders might. So we'll see. I'm fascinated. And I fully expect the Cleveland Browns to be on Hard Knocks if they haven't announced it already. Like that would be amazing to watch what's going on
Yeah.
there. I would say they're still in the market for a quarterback in next year's draft. I don't hate that they took Sanders. Like, just like I said, keep taking swings. Let the best guy win.
Yeah,
If
100%,
Sanders has a
100%.
chance to win that job, like
Yeah,
he's a better quarterback than Dylan Gabriel.
yeah.
Unless they just want to go veteran route and start Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco, like that's fine. But neither one of those guys is going to make it through the season. So
And
at some point, I
yeah,
expect Sanders, if he makes the team,
yeah.
to start a game at some point next year for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and for me too, I'm looking at their actual draft, and I like Graham. I like Schlesinger was a guy I thought the Raiders might grab. A linebacker out of UCLA, Junkins. I'm a big fan of Harold Fanning, from Bowling Green, and then they went, Gabriel Sampson and then Sanders. So listen, like I mean, listen, if you don't have a guy, like hey, just keep that's my philosophy too. Like just keep drafting guys until you find your bona fide starter. So I mean, good for him. What were your thoughts about this when I mean, like I think this got a lot of coverage. Even my girl came home. She's like, "Did Sanders get drafted?" I was like, "Wow." That's just really crazy. When she asked me that, I was like, "Wow, that's crazy."
I had people texting me that weren't watching the draft asking me, "Has he been picked yet? Has he been picked yet? Has he been picked
Picture.
yet?"
So I mean, to me, I think that real quick, I think the father did not handle the situation the best. Like he talked about like, and you've been in your experience, and you've been in draft situations, with more than most, more than the average person. But he was on TV talking about how they're gonna choose where they want to go. At the biggest thing for me that I thought was really crazy to me was like when he was at we had the pro day, and one of the NFL guys was trying to set up one of the players for to start running the 40 or whatever the driller was, and he excused himself into the conversation and said, don't listen to him, this is how you do it, whatever. And I'm like, okay, this is like, it was like really, kind of crazy. His youngest son didn't get picked, who he probably wasn't going to get picked. Shiloh wasn't going to get picked, but then Shiloh was, he immediately got an agent and then got on the team immediately afterwards. So it was just, I think it was kind of like a little bit of a circus here. And I think for Sanders, for Shador, it gives him it gives you an opportunity. You're still in the league. Like you didn't go as high as you thought you were going to go. You didn't go as high. I feel like you should have gone. Because I feel like he is. I don't think he's a superstar quarterback. That's why I didn't want to go like start the show with it and talked about hours and hours about Sanders, because he's not Caleb Williams or Jalen Daniels or any of those type quarterbacks. But I feel like he's better than a lot of guys who got drafted above him. And he put on better tape and performance about it. But like I think basically this was a situation where it was like the father was like, a little bit over, was, but definitely Dion was definitely overbearing and just talking a little bit too much. And if they went through the draft process the correct way, I think he probably gets drafted a little bit higher.
Yeah, to me, this isn't what happened with Shador Sanders during the college football season. This is what happened with him between January
Yes.
and draft day. It's about the process. He chose not to go to the Senior Bowl. He chose not to work out of the combine.
Yep.
He chose not to work out of the Big 12 Pro Day. He chose basically to do nothing other than throw at the Colorado Pro Day. He didn't have an agent, and that's a huge thing, especially in the scouting world. Like I can tell you from experience, there's players that teams in baseball want to draft in the top 10 rounds with everything slotted and how everything has to align like a puzzle. It's obviously not that way in football, but it's very hard to take a player that doesn't have an agent that has a relationship with your front office. I can see it in the NFL because if Dion's acting as the agent and he's trying to manipulate where Shador's going, they were very picky on where they took visits. And it wasn't until the very end you saw him say, okay, I'm not going to. Initially, it was basically Tennessee, the Giants, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Jets.
Yeah.
And then so that's top 7. And then finally he decided to visit Pittsburgh at the end when he probably realized, but without an agent, he's not getting feedback. There's no intermediary to tell Shador, hey man, these teams don't have you valued where you think you are. And Dion's probably not listened to anything the teams are telling him because he had his own mind made up of what he thought Shador was worth. And He went on national TV, national radio, basically saying that Sanders and Hunter were both going in the top 4 or 5, and he went on and on. He went on The View, like he was on everything and every show talking about Shador. And then, how did he handle the interviews? We've seen a number of people say that he did not handle the interviews well. We've seen information come out of New York where Brian Dable gave Shador Sanders, information to bring back to a meeting. I don't remember specifically if it was formations or reading defenses, but basically Shador wasn't prepared for his meeting with the Giants. Brian Dable called him out on it, and Shador got all pissed off. And Brian Dable basically said, "All right, that's it. We're done here." So how he handled the interviews with the scouts, with the teams, with the executives, how he handled the whole process by not working out. Now, if you're Marvin Harrison Jr., if you're guaranteed that you're probably going in the top 4 or 5,
you can do
whatever
that.
you want.
If
you're a second, third, fourth round guy and you start doing that stuff and pissing teams off, well, you got to sleep in the bed you made. And Shador Sanders, like you said, he still has every opportunity to make that team, to be a starting quarterback. But he's going to have to put his ego aside now, and he's going to have to go to work. And Deion's not going to be there to basically manipulate everything. It's a good landing spot. Deion was teammates with Bill Musgrave, who's in Cleveland. So he should get every opportunity there. But Shador's only going to get out of this what he puts into it. He's going on talk shows in the last couple of weeks talking about making rap albums and collaborating with this. He went on with Max Crosby and talked about doing a rap album. That stuff needs to go. You're a professional football player, you're a quarterback. Your job is to lead a group of men and go win football games. You're not a celebrity rapper. That's not who you are. If you want to do that, go do that. Then you're not going to be a quarterback. So Shador has to figure out what he wants. And obviously he handled this whole process completely wrong.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that's the bottom line. I think, listen, it's like
I wish him well. I hope he's a quarterback. I hope he has a good career.
Yeah, and I think also too is you have to be if you want to be a top. I think especially with the top 10, it's sacred ground in the National Football League to be a top 10 pick. When somebody is a bust in the top 10, you always hear that attached to him. Oh yeah, Tyree Wilson, top 10 pick, huh? Cleveland Farrell, top 10
Jamarcus
pick, huh?
Russell.
Jamarcus Russell, top 10 pick, huh? We hear it all the time as Raider fans. You know what I'm saying? Michael Huff, top 10
We
pick.
can go down the list.
I'm trying to
we'll need another hour on the show if we do that.
We can do that all night, right? But at the end of the day, if you want to be a top 10 pick, I can go through, if we go back and look at the top 10, I didn't hear and Travis Hunter went out and got an agent. I didn't hear a peep about any of those guys in the
now,
draft
Lamar
process.
Jackson didn't, but Lamar Jackson obviously was held in higher regard, and probably he didn't run either, but he did take place in a lot of the other stuff that went on in the process. And again, we don't know what happened.
The Senior Bowl to me, a Senior Bowl is a great event, and I thought the Senior Bowl would have been it was a good event for him to go to, and he chose not to. And I think all those guys, even with the guy last year, the year before with who else? Who went to that game? Penix and
Nix was there,
and Bo Nix was there, right? And Penix left early, and everybody was all these questions, whatever. But he did his thing and got ready for his pro day. It should have been the pro day that they had. It should have been a regular pro. You should have had a normal pro day. You know what I'm saying, and do it and just do everything. Show the whole thing, because he's the one guy in this besides Cam Ward who you can see on film, look to the left, look to middle, and then I got somebody over the top, and then throw over the top, and make a play. He's shown the ability to process, the process and break plays down. So where other people like Milroe hasn't been able to do that and stuff but Milroe has to grow into that and do that. So listen, the opportunity is there. I was worried after the 4th round. I was texting people. I was like, bro, I don't know if he's going. What if he doesn't even get drafted? That would be a whole different story. But the opportunity is there, and the opportunity to play is there. It's not like he's sitting behind any Hall of Fame, John Elway type quarterback.
Now, the last thing I'll add on is if you look at the new Raiders regime, and John Spyatek and Pete Carroll, and the only thing they talk about is compete, compete, compete. And the one thing that Sanders did not
Yes,
do
just compete.
throughout the process was compete. So it makes perfect sense why they didn't go there. And I'm sure Tom Brady had a bunch of saying it too. Like Tom Brady wasn't sitting around like not giving input. So um, if Brady really wanted him, he'd be a Raider right now. So my assumption is Brady wasn't all on board either to bring Shedeur Sanders to the Raiders. Now, what's going to happen next year if Sanders plays a little bit towards the end and he's just okay, and they end up with like 2 top 5 or 6 picks, and they go out and get a quarterback next year? So Shedeur Sanders is about to face we think he's faced adversity already. He's about to face a lot more if Cleveland doesn't have a good season, and then they end up with 2 top 5, 6, 7 picks next year.
Yeah, and I would just say just focus on the field. If I was him, just focus on the field. I mean, everything else you want to do after that, the focus on the field. Max Crosby raps too and has a podcast, but Max Crosby is also an All-Pro top 5 player in the league who's not a quarterback. So like so it'll come to you if you put in the work and you get to a certain level. I think the one thing I didn't like about it too is that it took away from Cam Ward. It's like, God damn, Cam Ward is the story that Cam Ward is as #1 pick, like just being a 0-star recruit, going from basically nothing to being the first pick of the draft. That kind of took away, all the the accolades for him.
Yeah, there wasn't a big spotlight on Cam Ward, but I think he likes it that way. Cam Ward just went out and grinded and went through and did his business throughout the offseason. Was really good in the interviews by all accounts, and deserved to go #1 based on the process and the film that he put out there.
Your favorite pick in the top 10?
My favorite pick in the top 10? I'm going to say Jacksonville saying screw them picks and going to get Travis Hunter. They went and got one of the 2 best players. And if they plan on playing them both ways, like I don't think they gave up a ton. They gave up a 1 next year and a 2, and then they got some picks back in that. So like I thought it would have been a lot more.
Yeah.
To go get what might be a generational talent.
Yeah.
I don't think, like I said, we've talked about this. I don't think he's going to play full time both ways, but like if he can go out and be a difference maker for Trevor Lawrence at wide receiver and then contribute on 3rd downs, we'll see. I did find it interesting going back to Ashton Jeanty. Did you see when Spytek put the little magnet on the board under the Raiders helmet and they had the numbers next to it as height, weight, his estimate at 40 at 4.43, and then if you looked to the right in red, it said KR. I don't know what that means, but there might be a chance the Raiders think Ashton Jeanty might give them some kick return. I would not
please don't. Please don't. Please don't. Please don't.
It said KR on his magnet.
Please don't. Please.
For something else.
That would be. Hopefully, it's Kevin Robinson, somebody we don't know. I don't know. I just hope it's nothing but that would be interesting to see that. Maybe if he does in the playoff game, then okay. But but right now I would not want to do that. I think my favorite pick in the top 10 is a Tet going to the Panthers. I like
Calvin Banks
and Carlton Banks maybe. Dude, I gotta say, I gotta call some folks out. Like, yo, all y'all had the Raiders big board, and then when people thought it was gonna be Kelvin Banks, I saw people redo it and say, "Oh, I had Kelvin Banks here all the whole time." Like, guys, like we can go back and look at your older tweets. Please don't do that again. No, but because I do think Bryce Young is he played very well at the end of last year. And I think him and Tet are going to have a really good rapport there as far as quarterback and wide receiver too. So I kind of like that pick a lot.
High school rivals.
I mean, hopefully,
Modern Day and Servite. I think Tet went to Servite.
Hopefully
Mason Graham.
Yeah, I mean, right now SC is actually signing players from California, so hopefully we don't have like too many. What a concept, right? They have the #1 class in 2026. They stole the GM from Notre Dame. Thank God they did that. But like, yeah, because seeing people like Bryce Young play somewhere else it was kind of nuts. But yeah, so I like that pick a lot. Also, I thought Mason Graham was almost there. I was kind of looking forward to Mason Graham, but it'd been interesting to see if it was Graham and Jeanty, but it makes sense. The move makes sense as far as that goes. The kind of most questionable pick in this draft for you. For me, it's still I'm holding out receipts for Tyler Show. I really am. I just don't know what they're doing at
This is
40 or who was the most questionable pick? I won't say worst because the player could end up being a good player, but who was the most questionable pick by the team?
I'll give you two.
Yeah.
James Pierce immediately comes to mind. For all the stuff you heard about him off the field, the pass rusher from Tennessee,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on off the field with James Pierce, by all reports, and if any of that stuff is accurate. The football makeup is a huge question, and they gave up a first round next year to go up again after they took Jalen Walker. So we'll see where James Pierce is 5 years from now. If he's still in the NFL, hopefully he is. But like, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I'd say the same with Luther Burden. I know a lot of Raider fans loved Luther Burden.
Yeah.
Dive into Luther Burden, off the field and see if you can find some of the stuff that was coming out about Missouri not really knowing where he was Monday through Friday. He showed up on Saturdays, but it's the guy that did not want to practice. He was not interested in doing a lot of that stuff, going to the weight room. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on with Luther Burden as well. So, like, two of the biggest makeup question guys, like, just reading the tea leaves, I thought were Pierce and Burden, and then they both went pretty good. I thought they were both going to drop a little bit.
So Luther Burden was like after the game on Saturday was like, "Yeah, I'll see you guys next week," and that's pretty much it, right? That's interesting.
Well, if you believe some of the stuff that was out there.
That's interesting. That's interesting. All right, cool, man. Cool. Always nice to have you on the show. Safe travels again this week, and we'll see you next time. You have an opportunity to come down. It's going to be, I guess, next big NFL day is going to be the selection of the schedule. That's going to be May 14th. That should be fun. Just do me a favor and do not send the Raiders out of the country. Please don't do it. Like they're not like when they're good. If they can get good under Pete Carroll, then send them there a couple years from now. But don't send them now, please. Please don't send them there.
Give me that Houston game early because I want to go to the game at Houston. So let's get that one in September so I can get a game under my belt.
No question about it. Anything else before we go?
No, that's about it.
That's it. All right, Raider Nation. Take care. See you next time. See you, Ryan. Later. Take care.